Hey everyone, Rudros here along with my good friend Daniel, some maybe better known as Ghoul02 depending on his Twitch channel, but he's one of my good friends and testing partners. We're very good FF chums. Daniel, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
Good.
All right, so this is another old classic game. Travis has obviously played more than a couple card games, as people will do. And the people that like to do, or at least I like to do, is read a card from another card game with no context, and you got to decide whether the card is crazy or terrible.
No in between.
Some of these are a little bit in between,
Okay.
but it's basically just read the card, kind of give me your thoughts. Tell me if you think this card would be crazy busted or if it would be awful, or average, just whatever your thoughts are on the card.
Okay. I'm up for the challenge. Just for the clarification, I have a basic understanding of Yu-Gi-Oh! Rules. I did play way back when the game first came out and the TV show first came out, back with Blue Eyes and Dark Magician and Exodia, but I haven't touched it since then, so I don't really even know how Link summoning and Pearl summoning and Kiss My Butt summoning and all that works. So we'll see how this goes.
If any of stuff like that is relevant, I'll give you kind of an explanation for how it actually works. There's a couple of extra deck cards that I did end up putting in just because I'm curious what your thoughts would be on it.
Sure. Shall we?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so first we have Pot of Desires. It's a spell card. Oh, I like that artwork. Banish 10 cards from the top of your deck face down. Face down. Draw 2 cards.
So face down is kind of, how in Final Fantasy you can never interact with your banish pile.
Yeah.
That's what face down banish means, because a lot of times you can return banished cards that are banished face up back to the game. When they're banished face down, it's very hard to get them back.
They're gone forever?
Yeah.
Well, I know Pot of Greed is great, so drawing 2 cards is obviously excellent. This one is at least hard restricted. You can only do it once per turn. I'm going to say this is... And I know Yu-Gi-Oh! Or at least I'd heard that it has some cards that want to be banished. So I'm assuming this is really good because surely there's some benefit to banishing those. And again, I know how good Pot of Greed was with the draw 2. So I'm going to say this one is very good.
This card is crazy.
Okay.
In some decks, it is functionally just Pot of Greed. So if you're playing a deck with nothing but 3 ofs, then the chances of you banishing all of a single card are very low. So a lot of times, whatever you banish off the top of your deck doesn't even matter. You're drawing 2 cards. Very few decks really benefit off of the banished face down cards. There's not a lot that really reads oh, you have X number of cards banished.
Oh, okay.
Because they're banished face down, they don't have a type. The game doesn't know if it's a monster, a spell, a trap, or anything like that.
Makes sense.
There are a couple cards. There's actually a really funny deck that based around an old card that just says it gains 400 attack for every banished card. So if you activate Pot of Desires and then normal summon that, you have a 4,000 attack beater.
Nice.
And that was a little rogue contender in late 2019. But yeah, this card's crazy. It was at 2 last I checked. It might still be there. I think they might have... So, but you can only play 2 copies of this deck.
All right. Next we have Dogoran, the Mad Flame Kaiju. He's pretty cool looking.
So Dogoran, you can special summon this card from your hand to your opponent's field in attack position by tributing a monster they control. If your opponent has a Kaiju, so basically think of Kaiju as the card's job.
Okay, so it's like a type, yeah.
So if your opponent has a card, a job Kaiju, you can special summon this from to your field in attack position. You can only control 1 Kaiju. Once per turn, you can remove 3 Kaiju counters from anywhere on the field, destroy all monsters your opponent controls. This card cannot attack the turn this card is active.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, assuming if you forget about the Kaiju part, you contribute a monster they control to basically give them this monster instead, right?
Yes.
And then if they control a Kaiju monster, which this card is a Kaiju, is that correct?
Yeah, there's 8 different Kaijus.
Okay.
So this is a Kaiju as well. So if they control this, you can if you have 2 Dogorans, you can give your opponent 1 and special the other to your field.
But this thing itself doesn't give Kaiju counters, right?
No, this has no way of generating Kaiju.
Okay, so then as far as I know, I don't know what else this can be combined with, so I can't really say much about that action ability. Even though, of course, destroy all monsters they control sounds super strong, but I don't know how the counters are made or easy to get.
And also remember, you're giving this to your opponent a lot of the time, too.
Which... I mean, I guess if you attributed something they really want, but you also then just gave them a big 3,000 if you're... You can... Obviously, if they have a Kaiju, it's a nice counter. Without knowing what the other kaiju stuff is, I'm going to say this isn't very good.
This card is really, really good.
Oh, okay. I was wrong.
So this is not, admittedly, this is not the best kaiju. But I wanted to show, this one has seen competitive play before, so I pulled it for that.
Okay.
But basically, you can ignore all of the text on this card, other than you can special summon this card from your hand to your opponent's field and attack by attributing a monster they control.
Okay.
You pick whatever the most threatening your opponent's card is, and you just gave them a Feral Chaos.
Oh, okay. I see.
So imagine you could just, get rid of a Rosa or something like that, or that Yuffie that you have.
Yeah.
That Yuffie's gone. You have now just a big beat stick that I can remove easily.
Oh, okay.
So the most common one people will run is called Gamma Seal. So if you ever hear jokes from Yu-Gi-Oh players about sea turtles, it's a sea turtle kaiju.
Oh, okay.
But the reason you play it is because it has the lowest attack, so you can punch over it easier than the other ones. But this one sees play because it's a dinosaur specifically, so it's a lot easier to get access to in dinosaur decks.
I gotcha. Huh. All right, then.
Yeah, it's basically the perfect removal spell. Very little cannot be tributed.
Okay. Good to know. All right. Next, Ursarctic Radiation?
Yep, Ursarctic Radiation. So you're going to activate this card by placing 7 counters on it. Each time an Ursarctic monster is special summoned from the hand or the extra deck, you can remove 1 counter from this card, draw a card. Once per turn during the end phase, you can target 1 Ursarctic card in your graveyard, except for Ursarctic Radiation. Shuffle it into the deck. You can only control 1 of this card. It's a continuous spell.
So yeah, it just sits there and keeps going. So when it's saying when you activate it, it puts the 7 counters on it. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So the first time you put this card on the field, you get 7 counters for free.
Well, I don't know anything about Ursarctic monsters, but I would assume if you're playing this card, you're going to load your deck up with these Ursarctic monsters, and I know how good card draw is. So, granted, it has to be special summoned, but I feel like, from what I've heard, that's just super easy to do in modern Yu-Gi-Oh.
Your normal summon is your special summon.
Yeah, that's what
now.
I figured. I was like, that's not like that was harder to do back in the day, but and then you just get to draw a card. So like that sounds insane that every monster now has the hey, also draw a card when it comes in. So I'm gonna say this one's crazy good in the deck it's meant to be played in.
This card should be crazy. This
not?
card has seen 0 play.
Really? Okay. Why is it?
The main reason is the deck it is in is not very good.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
So the idea, Ursarctics, the way they work is they have to you go super minus every time you summon one of them, trying to recuperate some of the card value that you're losing every time you special summon. And even drawing a card every single time you do that is not enough. It's still just way too expensive to actually summon any of these cards.
Gotcha. Okay.
But it is very funny they printed a card that says draw 7 because there's no once per turn. Every time you summon.
Which is woo. All right. Next up, Summon Breaker. What does this do?
So during main phase 1, if the turn player successfully conducts their third summon of a monster this turn, it is now the end phase. This is a field spell,
which means it affects both players, and it's like the old mountain rat. Back in my day, field spells were hey, your bird creatures get 200 attack. Yeah. Okay, so
of note, one small change since you played. Both players can control a field spell now.
Oh,
you can't destroy this by playing your own field spell.
Gotcha. Good to know. If the turn player successfully becomes the end, so obviously it skips combat.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a good player will. I don't know what kind of combos go on in Yu-Gi-Oh! So maybe if it's required that you have to summon 3 monsters before you do a bunch of spells and traps, maybe then that's a big hindrance because it forces you out of that phase. However, I would think a good player can just sequence their spells and traps in an order so that they're not ready to end until they want. I don't know. This doesn't seem very good to me. That'll be my guess.
Well, you're right, although the reason you're right is a little silly. This only works during main phase 1.
Oh, so you can just do everything in main phase 2.
Main phase 2 exists.
Gotcha.
So what this kind of says is your opponent has to stop doing their summons after their battle phase, or before their battle phase, and just you go to battle phase and then don't do anything. Go to main phase 2.
Gotcha.
Admittedly, it'd be kind of a fun card for those storm decks in Final Fantasy. It's just if you've cast 5 cards, your opponent's turn.
Oh, that'd be amazing! Yeah, please give me something like that.
But yeah, it's occasionally you can like sneak this index, but it's really gimmicky when you do it. So you can like activate this on your opponent's turn while they're about to summon their third monster, and it'll see the third summon and go, "Oh, that's your third summon, end phase." But it's really hard to line that up, and it's really gimmicky, and you're better off doing just about anything else.
Is there, just out of curiosity, is there anything in Yu-Gi-Oh kind of like the stack and FF where like, okay, time to go to end phase, and you can like respond to that still with more spells, or is it just an instant nope, end phase now?
The fact that says it becomes the end phase means that it is now immediately the end phase, but the end phase is a phase. You can do things in the end phase. It's not like Final Fantasy. You can do anything you can do at instant speed, you can do in the end phase.
Interesting. I like the art. I like the little switch and the little guy kind of trapped by the crystals. That's cool.
Yeah. There are good versions of this card that exist in the game, but this is not one of them.
All right, I got that one then. All right.
All right.
We
have Fairy Tale Snow with the very cute artwork.
Yeah.
So if this card is normal or special summon, you can target a face-up monster your opponent controls, change it to face-down defense position. If this card is in your graveyard, quick effect, so instant speed, you can banish 7 cards from your hand, field, or graveyard, special summon this card.
Well, back in my day, flip effects were a really big thing. So, like, I would be happy if my opponent, oh, you put my Man-Eater Bug face down or my Magician of Faith face down. Obviously, I don't think an opponent is ever going to foolishly do that, like if it's got a good flip effect. But it does say at instant speed, in combat or whatever, hey, put this thing out of the way. Or if you have a really heavy attack point monster, you could say, well, now it's in defense mode, so now it's easy to beat up. So, and being able to banish from any combination of hand, field, or graveyard seems pretty good, especially since you can immediately do it. So I think this one sounds really good.
This card is banned.
It's banned. Oh, okay, because it's too good, I'm guessing?
It is too good. This card
okay.
is crazy. They tried taking it off recently. They put it at 1, and it went right back to 0 on the next list. So the setting monsters is actually a very powerful effect.
Oh, okay.
Because now that monster no longer has any on-field presence. You can't. A lot of the different extra deck summoning mechanics require face-up monsters. So if it's set, you no longer can do that. So this card is simultaneously an interruption because of the quick effect. It's also an extender because you can use it for your own plays by, imagine, to use an old school example, imagine if you could bring this out and then tribute summon with it immediately.
Oh, I gotcha.
And you still have an interruption.
Yeah.
So, kind of a similar thing to what you can do with it now. But the biggest thing is this is an interruption that you can get out of your deck that is incredibly powerful and very hard to interact with.
That makes sense. All right. Next, we've got Lavalval Chain.
So this is Lavalval Chain. This is an Xyz monster. So real quick, the way Xyz monsters work, you have to have 2 monsters at the same level.
Okay.
And then you make a sandwich. You take the 2 monsters, you put them there, and then you put the Xyz monster on top of them.
Okay.
And the idea is the 2 monsters now become
the newer monster. Oh.
Oh, there's the Discord crash.
Welcome back.
Oh, okay. So,
hold on, let me make sure we're... Yep, okay, it still looks good. Let me go back to full screen. Okay, so XYZ, you take 2 level 4s, sandwich them together, and they make this new guy.
Yeah, so you make your sandwich, and then you can take the sandwich materials, and you can remove them to do effects.
Okay.
So once per turn, this takes 2 level 4 monsters, so the most common level. You can detach 1 Xyz material, so take 1 of those materials, you remove it, and you get to either send a card from your deck to the graveyard or choose a monster from your deck and put it on top of your deck.
When you send it to the graveyard, do you get to pick the card, I'm assuming?
Yeah, you pick the card, and any card in your deck from the deck to the graveyard.
Okay, well, based on that alone, I'm going to say it's busted because I know I've just heard through passing that basically stacking a monster or stacking something specifically you want into the graveyard to then do whatever crazy effect is really strong in Yu-Gi-Oh! Also, especially if you're going to draw something, being able to pull any monster from your deck, put it right on top and immediately grab it, that just sounds like super Yu-Gi-Oh! Combo effects. I'm going to say this card's really strong / busted.
This card is banned.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And the main reason is the send a card from your deck to the graveyard.
That's what I assumed.
So the thing that makes this really, really crazy, so there are cards that send cards from your deck to the graveyard.
Mm-hmm.
The one that sends a monster as a spell, you can only play one of in your deck because it's so good.
Okay.
This does this from the extra deck. So what that means is that like the extra deck functions as like a sideboard in Magic. So imagine if you could just go into your sideboard occasionally and just say, I want this card out of my sideboard. That's what the extra deck kind of functions as sometimes.
Huh.
So as a card from the side deck, I'm going to play, do exactly what I want to do and send this card to the graveyard.
Yeah.
And you are correct. The graveyard is effectively a second hand.
That's what I assumed.
So yeah, this card is very banned and will never come off.
See you, how did you pronounce it?
Lavalval Chain.
Lavalval Chain. All right.
All right.
The Heavenly Zephyr Miradora.
All right. So the activation and effect of this card's effects cannot be negated. If your opponent special summons a monster with 2,000 or more attack from the extra deck, you can special summon this card from your hand. If this card is special summoned from the hand, you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls that was special summoned from the extra deck. Neither player can activate that monster's effects while this monster is face up on the field. You can only use each effect of Heavenly Zephyr Miradora once per turn. So your opponent cannot stop you from doing this once you use the effects. They can't negate it.
Right, which that alone already sounds super strong. As long as an extra deck is very strong, which it sounds like it is if that previous card was banned from it, I mean, this just sounds super good because it's, okay, I'm going to my extra deck to get whatever my big boss creature is or whatever my big boss effect is. And then for you to be able to say, well, for free in response, boom, here's this thing, just completely shut it off. Like anytime I see negation, usually that tends to be something incredibly strong. So I'm going to say this one is very strong to busted.
This is a card I was wrong on when it was revealed. I thought this card would be good.
Uh-huh.
This card sucks.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
This card is horrible.
Wow, I totally whiffed then. So why is it bad?
So it's a little bit overly specific on what it hits.
Okay.
So your opponent has to go into the extra deck, so you can't stop a lot of the early plays. 2,000 attack, usually it's going to be kind of towards the end of their combos.
Mm.
And then if it's got an entry effect, this doesn't stop entry effects. This just says that they can't activate an effect from a card, so you can stop them from using a negate effect.
Oh,
but if they see this on the field, this only negates that while it's on field, so they can remove it before they pass it back to you. You still don't have the effect online, so there's just way too many ways to remove this card. It's a little too specific.
I gotcha. All right, that makes sense. Darn. It's not, maybe I was taken in by all the words. Well, a card with this many words surely has got to be amazing.
The words cannot be negated also. Just that's a huge flashing red light of, oh my god, this card's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Anything that says
all
no.
right.
Okay, so next we have Ghost, Sister, and Spooky Dogwood. Oh, that's cute art. Okay, I'm excited for this one.
All right, so once per turn, or during either turn except the end phase, you can discard this card, apply this effect. You can only use this once per turn. Each time your opponent special summons an effect monster during the main phase or battle phase, you gain life points equal to that monster's attack. If you did not gain life points by this effect, your life points are halved during the end phase.
I wonder why, in what situation you wouldn't gain life points by the effect. If you're always...
I mean, you could discard this and your opponent just says, okay, cool, go ahead.
Oh, and they just don't do anything?
Yeah.
So when it's on the field, it doesn't do anything. You have to discard it to specifically get that
You
power?
discard it from hand. It's kind of like a... Yeah, this is what's called a hand trap.
Hand trap, okay.
So...
I mean, let's say they summon... I'm going to show my age here. They summon Blue Eyes White Dragon, and then it has to be an effect monster, but let's pretend for, just because I know what its stats are. 3,000. So, okay, I gain 3,000 life points. That sounds good. But... Like you even kind of just said there, they could of course just choose not to do that. So I'm gonna say this one's kind of bad.
It is mostly bad, but not for the reason you think.
Okay, educate me.
So this is a series of hand traps in the game that we call the Ghost Girls, and they all have these different hand trap effects. They're kind of zero cost instants basically in Magic, or zero cost summons. And this one is kind of meant to be a nerfed version of another card. And the card it's trying to be said, draw a card every time your opponent special summons.
Okay.
That card is horrendous. It's technically legal in Japan, but not legal in like Western play at all.
Oh, I gotcha.
This was meant to be kind of a fixed version of that card. And the problem is that life points don't really matter that much.
I've heard that. Yeah, it's kind of like the only one that matters is the last one, right?
So yeah, so you can kind of like, I mean, you can gain, a ton of life points off of this, but eventually, like, you're not, if you can't play after you do that, like maybe you like survive for 3 more turns, but if you can't ever like break your opponent's board, you still never win the game.
That makes sense.
So you'd rather play a hand trap that like stops your opponent. The most common one is a card called Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, and what she does is your opponent would try to add a card from their deck to their hand, or search or draw, or do anything like that.
Sure.
You can discard that, and it's an instant that negates it. It says you don't actually get that draw, you don't get that search, you don't get to summon that monster from your deck.
Gotcha. Okay.
So in comparison, rather than this doesn't interrupt your opponent at all, which Ash does, or those other cards, and you really want to interrupt your opponent, otherwise they will just build the most insane, disgusting thing that you'll never be able to play through.
Makes sense.
There is one situation that Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood is good, though. The time rules.
Oh, if you're going to a time limit? Okay.
So the time rules in Yu-Gi-Oh! Are...
is it based on life points?
When time is called, you play until the end of whatever the current phase is, and whoever has more life points wins.
Oh, not even the turn, just the phase?
Not even the end of the turn. The end of the phase. So if you know you're going into time, and your opponent special summons a monster, and you do this in response to them doing that, or like you time it properly, you will gain life points and instantly win because you have life points that your opponent doesn't.
That sounds very specific.
She's actually seen side deck play this year because of it, which is hilarious.
Oh, that's funny. I love the art. The art's really cute.
Yeah, it's a really, really cute card. The whole series of cards is really adorable. Definitely like one of the best. It's kind of what holds the modern game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Together are this like series of cards. And,
gotcha. Okay.
Spooky Dogwood is unfortunately probably the worst of the series.
I gotcha. All right, well, let's see what we got next. There can be only one. Ooh, what a name.
This is a continuous trap, so you flip it up and it stays face up. Each player can only control 1 monster of each type. If a player controls 2 or more monsters of the same type, they must send some to the graveyards to control no more than 1 monster of that type.
And type would be like Blue Eyes as a dragon type, right?
Yeah.
So it's similar to Jobs, like you said in FF.
Yeah.
So it can only control 1 monster of each type. If a player controls 2 or more monsters... If this works the way I think it does, in that, okay, so they have to send some to the graveyard so they can control no more, but that doesn't sound like it prevents any effects from going off. So if I have Blue Eyes on the field, I can still, here comes super crazy effect monster, and it still does whatever it does. Yeah, I've got to sacrifice it or sacrifice Blue Eyes, but all my effects still happen. If that is true, then this sounds terrible, especially if I don't know how like big tribal decks or like type decks are in Yu-Gi-Oh.
I will clarify.
Sure, go ahead.
You can't do that. If you have Blue Eyes, you cannot attempt to play a dragon onto the field.
Oh, okay, so you can't even put it on there.
So that line is on there. If like when you activate this card, if your opponent has 2 dragons, they have to pick a dragon to keep.
Okay. Well, so if that's the case, if they still can't get all the effect benefits, that sounds a lot better. I don't know what the ratio of, again, like single type decks are in Yu-Gi-Oh! So if single type decks are kind of prevalent like tribal decks are in Final Fantasy, then I would say this probably isn't super great, or it's very specific. But if they...
you're also thinking about this the wrong way.
Okay.
This is 1 monster of each type. So you can have a dragon and a spellcaster and a warrior.
Oh, okay. I thought it was 1 type across the whole board.
Right.
Oh, well, this sounds terrible then. This card's got to be bad.
This card is almost ban-worthy.
Really? Okay. Explain.
So if you catch a deck on the wrong part, you can flip this over, and they will just never be able to play the game again.
Really?
And there are decks that this doesn't affect at all. So you can play basically under a one-sided effect that your opponent can't interact with at all, and it's very hard for them to play under, if not impossible. There are decks that are just straight up like dragon good stuff. And if you do this when they normal summon, they can never summon another dragon. They're done. They lose.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was kind of thinking about it the wrong way. Huh.
So, yeah, imagine if like you could do this against Soiree and they could only have one
God Wars
of Soiree member on the field at a time.
That'd be incredible.
So that's kind of what this does. It is. There's a couple of these. There's one that says same attribute, so dark, light, fire, earth. There's another one that's what you were talking about earlier, where it's like you can only and then there's one that's you have to have different attributes. So it's like you have to have you can have one fire, one dark, one earth, one light.
I gotcha. Okay.
For the couple of these, all of them are really good if your deck can play under them effectively.
Huh.
If your deck can't play under them effectively, they're really obnoxious. A lot of people have called for this one to get banned because it's the most powerful.
Wow. Yeah, I can see why when you explain it that way.
All right, so here, ready for the last one?
Yes, sir. What is this? The Topologic Gumblar Dragon. Gumblar. That's a funny word.
So this is a Topologic Gumblar Dragon. So this is a Link monster.
Okay. Yeah, it's got the little arrow things.
I'm not going to go super in-depth onto how Link monsters work. The main thing that you need to know is to make this thing, you have to send 4 monsters to the graveyard, and you can summon it from your extra deck.
Okay.
Or 4 monsters worth of materials, basically. But you have to go through 4 monsters to get here.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then the arrows matter because if they point to something, then that'll cause different effects to go off.
Okay.
So this one is a Link 4. So again, 4 monsters. If another monster is special summoned to a zone a Link monster points to, so those arrows that it's pointing to,
yeah,
discard up to 2 random cards. Then your opponent discards the same number of cards. I believe that's at random as well. If this card is extra linked, you can make your opponent discard 2 cards. Then if they have no cards in their hand as a result, inflict 3,000 damage. That effect, just ignore it. It's not super duper relevant. It's pretty hard to extra link.
Okay.
That basically you can take the monsters and make a really complicated pattern, and then you get bonus effects.
Okay.
You can only use 1 effect per turn, only once that turn.
So if I ignore the extra link, because that sounds pretty crazy, doing another 2 discard. So you discard randomly, and they discard randomly. Well, I know FF has some things like Poo-Poo that lets you get around the penalty of discards, and that, hey, if you don't have anything to discard, you can just make them discard. But I feel like Yu-Gi-Oh! Is also way more reliant on having a big hand, or at least the little I know about it.
And also remember that the way this works, if you only discard 1, your opponent will only discard 1.
Right. I mean, I don't know, I can't. And you don't even get to control what it is, which sometimes is good, right? Random disc, because it means they may have to give up their worst thing, but then maybe they give up something. I'm gonna get just discarding your own cards doesn't sound good, unless, of course, there's some. Oh, when this card's discarded from your hand, you win the game. So I'm gonna caveat for that. I don't think this card sounds very good.
This card is Omega banned. This card should not have been printed.
Oh, wow. It's that bad? Okay. I'm way off then. Please tell me.
So again, the main thing that's intended to be the balance for this is that this is a Link 4, which means that it's pretty hard to get a Link 4 onto the field. It takes a lot of investment. You're pretty deep into your combo by the time you get here.
Okay.
However, what you end up doing with this card is there's a couple cards that you can discard that don't really matter much to you at this point in the combo. You've done your combo. You can recur a couple cards from your break zone that don't do anything, but you can kind of get them back for free.
Okay.
And then you discard randomly, and you try to discard those cards, essentially. The deck this is in was known for being able to rip your opponent's entire hand before they got to play the game.
Oh, jeez. Wow.
So you could go, on your turn, you would summon this, summon a monster to it, discard 2, your opponent would discard 2. There's another monster in the combo that would rip a card from your opponent's hand, and you would actually look at their hand, see what they had in it, rip the card out. Then on your opponent's turn, they would draw their card for turn, and you would, at quick effect, you would summon something like Fairy Tale Snow to a Link pointer that this points to.
Oh.
Discard 2 more cards. They would discard 2 more cards before they ever had a chance to activate a card or summon a monster.
Well, when you say it that way, yeah, it sounds absolutely busted.
I tried to find the weakest sounding discard card that I could. Discard effects in Yu-Gi-Oh! Are generally really, really powerful, and I know you tend to play a lot of it in Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
So I tried to find a weird, kind of a janky type of well, you're discarding 2 of your own cards, and then your opponent's discarding 2. That can't be that bad, right? No. This card single-handedly ruined like multiple major events by existing.
Wow, good old Gumblar. I'm getting beaten by a Gumblar dragon. That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, that sounds absolutely insane when you explain it like that. Like, good gravy.
Yeah, it is. It's one of the most infamous cards like to ever have been printed. And also, remember, it's action deck monster. You don't have to actually draw this card.
Oh, okay.
So imagine, instead of having to like, oh, I'm going to play, 7 CP Sephiroth. It's like, it's 7 CP Sephiroth that you play out of your sideboard.
Oh, yeah. He sounds a little ridiculous. Just a little.
So, yeah, those are some of the more fun Yu-Gi-Oh cards that I try to stump you on a little bit.
Nice. No, you did a pretty good. Like, some of them I feel like I kind of got, but some of them I definitely was way off with the guesses.
Yeah, no, it's definitely funny to kind of hear your thoughts. So yeah, just the main things in Yu-Gi-Oh that you need to remember is that it's very special summon heavy. A lot of decks will special summon 10, 11, 12 times in a turn now.
Holy moly, that's insane.
It's such a big thing. There's a hand trap that's a pretty commonly played one that says if your opponent special summons 5 times, nuke the whole board.
5 times? I mean, how do you even have enough cards to do that? Is the card draw prevalent, or are you just pulling right from the deck?
The extra deck summons are all considered special summons, so you're pulling out of there a lot.
Oh, okay.
A lot of cards summoned from the deck. At some point, I'll walk you through a Yu-Gi-Oh combo if you want to see what they look like.
Sure, I'm sure it sounds absurd.
The deck that I play probably special summons about 17, 18 times in a turn on its first turn. It's all going first too, where you don't even draw.
Your opponent hasn't even done anything yet. Like,
so this is why those hand traps are so important too. It's kind of like your little quick speed, your instant counter spells to kind of stop your opponent from really going off on their first turn. So the best way I can describe Yu-Gi-Oh is like Dead by Daylight, where there's like the boogeyman.
Yeah.
But like everyone else is trying to beat the boogeyman.
Yeah.
The player that goes first is the boogeyman. They're going to set up the most crazy, disgusting thing they can set up, and the player that goes second is like the little person trying to like crank the little things and run through. It's really interesting in that because it becomes this like really, it's like asymmetrical. Like the person that goes first is playing a totally different game from the person that goes second.
Yeah. Huh.
And then also, if the person that goes second can break the board, a lot of times they'll just kill that turn.
Wow.
So it's very fun. It's very fast. It's very different from every other card.
Absolutely insane. Well, thank you for sharing these cards with me. I had fun. It was good to look at those and just kind of guess all that. Shall we wrap up?
Yeah, sounds great.
Excellent. Folks, let me know what you thought below about the boss monsters, and if you play Yu-Gi-Oh, or what cards you guessed correctly or knew about or didn't know about. Daniel, thank you for coming on and sharing that with me. That was very fun to do.
Yeah, sounds great.
Excellent.
Hope to do it again soon.
Absolutely. All right, well, let us know what you think in the comments below. If you like what you see here, you can always like and subscribe. And there's a Patreon if you're interested in donating, but nonetheless, I'm grateful to have you around. Till next time, take care.